everybody, welcome back to Memorial May. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to our town. I'm taking you around Melbourne, Florida, looking for historical markers and then learning about them and sharing with you what I've learned. Today we are going to the downtown area of Melbourne, right at the end of the street where the train tracks crossed, which had never occurred to me before that this is actually part of what used to be the Florida East Coast Railway System. And I've done several videos in the past talking about sites I have seen that are relevant to the Florida East Coast Railway System. But I guess I had never really thought about the fact that it ran right through my town. There's not a lot to see, it's just the train tracks, which is now the Bright Line, and probably other freight trains too. I assume other trains use this track. But when I parked the Jeep and was walking to find the marker, I found another historical marker almost at the same site. So you're getting another twofer video. I'm not sure what the other marker says, I just saw it, so I'm gonna have to go read it and then learn about it and share it with you really quick. I hope you enjoy, let's go.
Today's adventure is bringing us to downtown Melbourne, Florida in search of one of the many historical markers along the Florida East Coast Railroad system. We are at the intersection of New Haven Avenue, Melbourne Avenue, and Depot Avenue, basically at the end of what could be considered Main Street in this town. While I was out looking for the railroad marker, I came across a second historical marker in the town square where the roads intersect, so today's video is going to be a twofer. Let's start with the historical marker at the railroad crosswalk. I am not even going to pretend like I am any kind of expert on Florida's extensive railway history, so this is definitely going to be an abbreviated narrative. I didn't know much at all about the railroad system until last summer, when Michael and I happened to drive past an old wooden train depot in Port Orange. I did turn the car around and get out and film it, and then later looked up what it was. There's a video on our channel about the Port Orange train depot if you have any interest in looking it up. Since then, I've noticed that, shall we call it, train history keeps popping up everywhere we go, so I'm going to dedicate this video to being a super condensed Florida train history lesson. The Florida East Coast Railway was developed by Henry Morrison Flagler, an American tycoon, real estate promoter, railroad developer, and partner of John D. Rockefeller in Standard Oil. Flagler traveled to Jacksonville, Florida in 1878 on the advice of his physician to winter with his first wife, Mary, who was quite ill at the time. 2 years later, after she died, he married her former caregiver, Ida Alice. The new couple traveled to St. Augustine, Florida for their honeymoon. Flagler found the city charming, but the hotel facilities and transportation systems inadequate. He recognized Florida's potential to attract out-of-state visitors. He gave up his day-to-day involvement in Standard Oil and began to pursue interest in promoting Florida's tourism potential. In 1885, Flagler began building a grand hotel in St. Augustine, the Ponce de Leon Hotel. Flagler realized that the key to developing Florida was a solid transportation system. At the time, St. Augustine was served by a narrow-gauge railway system that was poorly constructed, and its passenger services would be inadequate for patrons to reach the new hotel. Flagler fully purchased the 3 rail lines and rehabilitated the system to his standards, purchasing new rolling stock and converting the track to standard gauge. He built a modern depot facility as well as schools, hospitals, and churches, systematically revitalizing the largely abandoned historic city. By 1888, Flagler was interested in expanding his network beyond St. Augustine. He acquired additional railroads that year to expand further south. In 1892, landowners south of Daytona were petitioning Flagler to extend the railway 80 miles south. Flagler began by laying new tracks, but no longer did he follow his traditional practice of purchasing existing railroads and merging them into his growing rail system. Under Florida's generous land grant laws passed in 1893, 8,000 acres could be claimed from the state for every mile built. Flagler would eventually claim in excess of 2 million acres for building his railroad, and land development and trading would become one of his most profitable endeavors. Flagler obtained authorization to build a railroad along the Indian River to Miami. As it progressed southward, cities such as New Smyrna and Titusville began to develop along the tracks. The railway reached Fort Pierce in 1894. The development of the hotels created by Flagler established Palm Beach as a winter resort of the wealthy members of America's Gilded Age. Palm Beach was intended to be the terminus of the Flagler Railroad. However, severe freezes in 1894 and 1895 hit all of Central Florida, while the Miami area remained unaffected. This caused Flagler to rethink his original decision to end at West Palm Beach. In September 1895, Flagler renamed all of his various railroad systems the Florida East Coast Railway Company and continued to progress further south. Fort Lauderdale was reached in 1896, and 1 month later, present-day Miami, which at the time was a settlement of less than 50 inhabitants, was reached. When the town was incorporated in July of 1896, the 50 citizens wanted to honor the man responsible for the city's development and name itself Flagler. He declined the offer, persuading them to retain its old Indian name, Miami. Flagler dredged a channel, built streets, and the Royal Palm Hotel, instituted the first water and power system, and financed the town's first newspaper, the Metropolis. There is so much more to say about the history of the Florida East Coast Railroad, but I think for time's sake in this video, I'm going to pivot here to talk about the other historical marker at this same site. I wasn't expecting this second marker, but I didn't want to miss out on the opportunity to talk about what is here and how history overlaps itself. This marker simply reads Campbell Park, and it is here to signify the many acres of land in this area that were originally owned by Peter Wright. Wright was a black man and one of the first settlers in this area. 3 black men, 3 former slaves, including Peter Wright, are credited with founding Crane Creek after the American Civil War. Crane Creek is today part of West Melbourne. They arrived in 1867 or 1868 after the United States Congress passed the Homestead Act of 1866. Crane Creek was a wilderness of tropical foliage, snakes, wildcats, panthers, bears, mosquitoes, and exotic birds. The waters teemed with fish. When the 3 men arrived, they were taken across Crane Creek by the local magistrate. Each was given 4 stakes, and they were told that wherever they walked today, they could mark it off and consider it their own property. Peter Wright was a captain of his own vessel, and he was the first mail carrier in this area, traveling as far north as Titusville and as far south as Fort Pierce twice a week. His brother brought mail from New Smyrna down to Titusville for Peter to carry it on from there. The 3 original black settlers founded the Allen Chapel Church. Wright sold his property to Thomas Mason, an English recluse, who later sold the property to Richard W. Good for $110. The property became the grounds of the Good House, which was a hotel, later renamed the Bellevue Hotel, which is located where the Orange Spot Apartments are today. The Flatiron Building was erected in 1924. Part of this property was deeded to the city to create a street, and this triangular point of land began to sprout trees, checker players, and horseshoe pitchers. Later, band concerts, political rallies, auctions, gopher races, and marbles were all enjoyed here. By 1928, this property belonged to William C. Campbell, who gave the land to the city officially to create a public park.
How about that for a twofer video? Campbell Park and the Florida East Coast Railway. I kind of had to abbreviate some of the information a little bit just so they would both fit in one video. I didn't really think anybody would want to see the same footage twice with 2 different voiceovers, so I'm just going to call this a twofer and give you a little crash course in why both of these historical markers are here. And as I was walking around I had to park about half a mile away, I got to thinking there are so many beautiful old buildings here in Melbourne. There was a fire. I forget the exact year. Let me put it on the screen here so I don't misquote myself. I know there was a fire that pretty much completely destroyed downtown Melbourne in the early 20th century. So we don't have a lot of buildings a lot older than that. But I was thinking maybe for the sake of Mustang and anybody else who likes architecture, maybe I should do another series after the historical markers is over and go around and film old buildings. I have questions about how I should do that. Architecture has not really ever been my thing. I appreciate it from the standpoint of someone who doesn't know anything about it. But I was wondering, is it good enough to walk around the outside of buildings and film them like all the way around, all the 360 or the circle all the way around the building? Is that good enough? Or do people who like architecture also, do they need to see like inside the building? Because a lot of these buildings are businesses, or there's nothing operating in them now, or they're, privately owned. I can't just get into these buildings, and I also am a little shy to show up with my phone and ask if I can come in and film everything. So I don't know. If you are a person who appreciates architecture and would like to see more, let me know down below. Am I supposed to thoroughly film inside and outside, or do people who appreciate architecture mostly just care about the outside of the building? I'd feel a lot more confident filming the outside of the building. Anyway, off on a tangent here. I didn't mean to do that. I'm going to wrap this video up. I hope you enjoyed this twofer Memorial May historical markers video. I will see you guys in another video another day. Bye, everybody.